Today's topic, 3 non-sex moves that turn a man on, and men crave this. Okay, let's face it, physical connection, sexual connection is an important part of a relationship. In fact, the differentiating factor between romantic relationships and just friendships and family and such is the physical connection with another human being. And while I'm not a sex expert, and I want to just be very clear, I'm not a sex expert, what I'm about to share is a reflection of a forum I belong to where there are thousands of men. And within this group of men, they shared the types of things that turn them on. And I went and did my own investigation with my circle of male friends to ask, what are some non-sexual moves that turn you on? And I thought this would be a good conversation for today. Now, in a previous video, I did share one non-sexual move that men crave, and that is centered around spooning. Now, I want to be clear, when I shared that video about spooning, I'm talking about emotionally connected men. I'm talking about emotionally mature men. Now, I say emotionally connected, we have a significant percentage of the population who is deeply wounded, whether they're a man or a woman. And people who are emotionally wounded have a difficult time connecting on an emotional level. And spooning is a very intimate, emotional experience with another human being. And so when I shared that, I also want to point out that not every man likes that because maybe they're sensitive to certain things, but most likely in many cases, they have difficulty opening up emotionally to another person. So even that act of spooning can be very challenging for those. So when I shared that in the video, and what I'm talking about today is centered around those men who are emotionally in touch with themselves. And even within this conversation, when I share these 3 non-sex moves, I'm talking about men who have most likely done some inner work. They're introspective. They have a sense of their emotions, their feelings. And in this particular case, in this study, most men agreed these are the types of things that turn them on. Now, I want to address something. Since I mentioned the physical sexual component of a relationship, I want you to look at a successful relationships that it's like the following. I want you to picture a rectangular table with 6 legs, okay? There's legs on each corner, and there's 2 legs in the center. Now, why I'm using this example is I want to kind of point out how each leg of a table represents one solid factor within a successful relationship. Okay, one solid factor. So within that leg of the table is emotional connection. We talked about that a little bit already. Another leg in the table is intellectual connection. Another leg to the table is what I call practical responsibilities, and I'll dive into this a little bit more. Another leg to the table is spiritual connection. Another leg to the table is emotional maturity and relationship skills. And then the final leg to the table, and this is in no particular order, is the physical sexual connection within a relationship. See, as I said earlier, what differentiates romantic relationships from every other type of relationship is there's a physical connection with another human being, usually even on a sexual level. And I say usually, for those of us in midlife, sex may not be as important as it was in our 20s and 30s. And yet at this stage in our lives, I will tell you that there's a significant percentage of people that are still highly driven by their physical need to connect with another human being. And quite frankly, I was even telling a client who is 65 years old this morning, listen, get as much sex as you possibly can until you can no longer. And that's what a lot of people do at midlife. So these legs of the table, I said emotional connection. See, that's an important facet to a successful relationship, is having an emotional, intimate connection with another human being. Now, I know many of you ladies are frustrated in the dating marketplace because you're experiencing men who are emotionally constipated. They're emotionally unavailable. They are emotional zombies walking around. And I know for many of you, that can be rather frustrating. And yet without some level of emotional connection, if that leg on the table is weak, I want you to imagine, as I'm sharing these 6 legs to the table, if any leg is weak, it makes the table somewhat unstable and may not be safe to sit on such a table. So when two people have a good emotional connection, that's a great start. If they had an intellectual connection, in other words, there's a meeting of the minds, there's a relative simpatico in that sense. In fact, many people have now identified themselves as sapiosexual. Sapiosexual means what turns them on most is a intellectual connection with another human being. And certainly feeling like you are with, not necessarily has to be your equal, but somebody that can keep up with you at an intellectual level represents one of the legs in the table. Now, that third leg, and again, this is in no particular order, is that practical responsibility. This is a person who takes care of their bills and takes care of their health, takes care of their bills and takes care of their health. Now, I say this because there's a significant percentage of the population who is struggling on a financial perspective. Many people are even substantially in debt. Makes it not that debt is a bad thing per se, but they're struggling financially. And in this case, many people in midlife are not in the capacity to take care of two people. Some people struggle to take care of themselves, but at least they're responsible in this way. They're responsible in their health. And that's a really important leg to a table. Now, is it the corner to your table or is it those two center ones? You have to decide this for yourself, but practical responsibilities. Spiritual connection. You know, very few couples actually engage at this level. Now, certainly those that are religious have a spiritual connection, but there is some value to being connected to something higher than yourselves. What's the purpose of life? Why am I here? What's this all for? Those questions that require some deeper emotion, deeper thinking, deeper, reflecting. Those couples that have a spiritual connection seem to have a stronger leg to the stronger. That's a strong leg to a table. Remember, we're trying to keep that table such that you can stand on such a table. Now, I also included emotional maturity and relationship skills. Well, sadly, we are swimming in a population of emotionally dysfunctional human beings with poor relationship skills at best and weak emotional maturity. This is one of the weakest legs in most of the tables out there. This successful relationship table I speak of, there is a weak level of relationship skills, a weak level of communication skills. And so I'm just here to draw attention to this. And the sixth and final leg is that physical sexual connection you have with someone. And by the way, two people that are very compatible sexually, oftentimes that's a strong leg of their table that I'm talking about that allows them to flourish in their relationship if they are hitting those other legs to the table. So just to repeat those legs to the table: emotional connection, intellectual connection, practical responsibilities, spiritual connection, emotional maturity and relationship skills, and finally, physical and sexual connection with a person. These are the 6 legs to the table of a successful relationship. And I hope that gives you some context of how to maybe view the next person or the person you're in relationship right now and ask yourself these questions. Are we aligned with one another? Are the legs on our table as secure as I wish them to be? All right, so now we're going to dive into the 3 non-sexual moves that turn a man on. Men crave this. And as I said before, this was based on a survey in a forum I belong to of thousands of men. And I also did a follow-up with my circle of friends. And these were the top 3 of the many that came up. So I wanted to lean into this conversation. This is basically foreplay, if you will. These foreplay moves that turn a man on. They're non-sexual foreplay. And this might be someone's kink as well. So you've got to decide. And by the way, our kink is what turns us on, right? So the first one is, again, this isn't based on Jonathan's philosophy. This is just based on some work I did out in the forum world. The first one is sensual teasing touch. Sensual teasing touch. Things like slowly running your fingers through his hair, Now, I get it. A lot of men don't have hair, have limited hair, but that's certainly one thing. You've seen me do this frequently. Your fingers along, your nails along his back. That's another sensual teasing touch. Your lips over sensitive areas like his neck, his chest, his inner thigh, his lower abdomen, without immediately going to the obvious spots. These are teasing techniques. These are ways to arouse a connection. And so these are just some light teasing touches, creates anticipation. It creates excitement. It creates that desire to want to connect. I think foreplay is underrated for a lot of people. They go immediately to sex, but there's this dance of connecting with this foreplay, these non-sexual moves that heightens your physical connection with another human being. And so I'm inviting you all to kind of lean into these things and ask yourself the next time you're connecting with someone is maybe have a conversation with them about this. Maybe you have them watch this video with you. And certainly do your own homework when it comes to non-sexual touch or foreplay with a man or with your partner. I invite couples to do this together so they can learn about each other's bodies. And it's to be open about these conversations instead of just expecting that we all divinely know this. Oh, we just know this stuff. You know, the truth is every person is different. Everybody has a different preference. I know in my relationship, I share my preferences. And certainly with women that I've dated, I share my preferences and I invite them to share their preferences as well. But certainly of thousands of men that were surveyed, this happened to be one of the top ones, was sensual teasing touch. Number 2. Now, I'm going to share with you what was shared publicly, but I have a slight modification to this. So it said, whispering dirty talk. Whispering dirty talk. Lean in close, whisper something suggestive, or compliment him in a sultry tone. Let your breath hit his ear, or this is what I wrote down. Let your breath hit his ear or neck as you speak to build the arousal through both words and physical sensation. But I want to add something different than dirty talk. I'm inviting you to whisper appreciation. You know, men's number one complaint after divorce is they didn't feel appreciated in their marriage. That's the number one complaint, I think, of hundreds of thousands of men who have, I guess it's the exit interview after a divorce. What was one thing that you felt was a failure in your relationship? They didn't feel appreciated. You know, this is true for men and women alike. I think couples do such a poor job of expressing appreciation to one another. I can tell you that gratitude, appreciation is one of the foundational pieces to a successful relationship. So in this non-sexual move, this foreplay, you can simply whisper some of the things you appreciate about the person you're with. I know I experienced that. I know I abundantly do my best to express appreciation, because when you appreciate someone, you value them. When you value them, you want them in your life. When you value them, you want to be physically connected with them. And I think gratitude and appreciation is one of the strongest forces, one of the strongest forms of love. And when we whisper it, it's actually in that sultry tone. It actually connects him to his heart. Well, we're hoping that it connects to his heart. Not everyone is capable of that. But when you do it in such a way, it allows him to connect with his heart. And number 3, the final one, is passionate kissing and nibbling. Passionate kissing and nibbling. Deep, lingering kisses mixed with gentle nibbling on his lips, earlobes, or collarbone that can drive him wild. Vary the pressure and the pace to keep things exciting and unpredictable. Yes, passionate kissing and nibbling. Those are certainly some things you can do to create a stronger bond with your person, because let's face it, dating and relationships these days are rather complicated. It is such, I mean, in some cases, it's so mind-boggling overwhelming for some people to connect with one another. And I know these videos aren't the end all be all answer to everything, but I'm just inviting some perspective. I'm inviting some opportunities that maybe you can practice some of these things. Maybe you can encourage your partner to both have a conversation about physical intimacy, because as I said before, in those 6 legs to a table, it happens to be, I think, one of the corner legs is that sexual physical connection and compatibility is radically important for a successful relationship long-term. For those of you that are relatively new in a relationship, I'm not talking about a seasoned relationship. Sex, maybe that might have, that ship might have sailed, but certainly for those that are in new relationships, fledgling relationships, beginning a relationship, I'm inviting you all to recognize the value of this. And I'm going to repeat those 3 non-sexual moves that turn a man on. Sensual teasing touch. Sensual teasing touch. Number 2, whispering dirty talk, or my modification is whispering appreciation in a very sultry voice. And lastly, number 3 is passionate kissing and nibbling. Passionate kissing and nibbling. Can someone write that down and post it for us all? I hope someone will do that for us. Hey, did you get value out of this conversation? I'd like to hear your thoughts. Post a comment below. I do my best to read them all in the first 24 hours. As always, if you find value in the videos, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of new videos. And if you want to connect with me directly, there's links below to schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. There's a link to join my group called Midlife Love Mastery, where you can have direct access to me on a regular basis. There's a link to follow me on Instagram to get the books I recommend, all listed below. All right, those who know my live format know it's time for Q&A. If you have a question, write the word question in the chat box. And then post the question thereafter, or you can purchase a super sticker, super chat. All of the monies from the super sticker, super chat goes to a scholarship fund in the name of my son, Connor Asley. That's a picture of him right there. He's my son who passed away 6.5 years ago. In his honor, we donate to causes like the Hoffman Process, Insight Institute, and scholarships to coaching as well. And our goal tonight is $50. So I'd appreciate your love. Thank you so much. We already got one donation already from Christina Knoll. Thank you so much for the $10 super sticker. And thank you for the $1 super sticker as well. I appreciate that. Monica wants to point out these non-sexual foreplay moves work both ways. Yes, it works for men and women alike. Men and women alike. Absolutely. Annika wants to point out Esther Perel is very good with describing how to be sensual. I love her guidance as well. Yes, she's one of the premier relationship experts out there. Let's see. Christine, I don't know the answer to the question about the spine surgeon. I'm sorry about that. Joe Daisy says, and of course, all sensual touching, especially tantric. That's another show. Again, there's a lot more than 3 out there. I just wanted to share 3 for tonight's conversation. So as we're waiting for questions, and again, if you have a question, write the word question and post. Oh, if anyone wants to join the hot seat, I'm posting a link as well, and I'll do it a few more times. This way, if you want to connect with me directly. Oh, Roller Girl just gave us a $2 super sticker. Thank you for the love. I appreciate that. So I want to share something with you all that's a reflection of something happened in my relationship. So many of you know I began seeing someone. We've been together now for 8 weeks. In that 8 weeks, I think out of how many, let's see, 7 times 8 out of 60 days, I guess that's roughly 60 days, a period of time, give or take. We've probably physically seen each other 30 plus times. We've gone out on dates. We've hung out. We spent the weekend together. We spent a fair amount of time together. Now, our relationship happens to be one where we live 3 miles from one another. In fact, she'll be coming here as soon as the video's over so we can watch the sunset together. And we've spent a lot of time, and we've agreed to be monogamous. We've agreed to be exclusive. We are agreeing to explore a deeper connection, a deeper relationship that has some potential partnership. In other words, we're viewing this relationship from a life partner perspective, not casually, but we're considering it from that long-term point of view and not a short-term point of view. Why I'm sharing this with you is this weekend we had an ick moment, an uncomfortable moment, and I want to share with you what I felt emotionally and why many men and women experience these same things. And I thought it'd be a good conversation to lean into when we have uncomfortable conversations with the person we're dating. So in this particular case, it was about a miscommunication on an event we talked about going to 2 months from now, or roughly a month and a half from now. And when she originally brought it to my attention, I thought she was planning this event and paying for this event, treating me. I thought that's when she initiated the conversation. I thought that was the case. And what I now reflect back on our communication, there was a miscommunication on this particular event. And what happened was I thought she was treating me. She thought I was treating her. There was a miscommunication. And then we had to deal with the real aspects of dating and relationships. And this is centered around money. And we began having a deeper conversation about money. Now, if you're not familiar with the book, 8 Dates by Doctors John and Julie Gottman, I highly recommend reading this book because chapter 4, if you guys can see this, it says the cost of love, work and money, okay? So what ended up happening this weekend, we end up having a deeper conversation about where we stood financially in our lives, what we foresee our life in our future, how much we budget each month for entertainment and travel in our lives, how this might affect a relationship from a long-term perspective, because we're both, we're over 55 years old, we're getting closer to that retirement age. How do we see ourselves beyond retirement? Where do we see ourselves living sometime in the future? How would we pool resources together? We had a deep dive conversation about this because we want to make sure we're on the same page. And I can tell you there were some uncomfortable moments because we viewed things a little bit differently. And this is a very common experience for men and women alike. This is where a lot of couples don't even spend time talking about money and work and the capacity to generate resources. They kind of bury their heads under the sand or under the rug, so to speak. And we had one of those conversations. Now, at first, it felt uncomfortable to me, not the conversation itself, but I thought we were maybe radically misaligned with each other. And I started to pull back a little bit emotionally because I thought we were misaligned on how we value money, how we value entertainment, and the responsibility in that area. And so it was a little bit uncomfortable for me because at first I thought we were misaligned. As we began asking deeper questions of one another and we started to explore and be more curious, we realized that we were actually more closely aligned than we thought we were. Although we do have some differences. I'm at a space in my life, I'm being rather conservative. I like to have all my extra resources go away for retirement. So all my disposable money I put towards retirement. I'm actually radically conservative when it comes to entertainment. She's a little bit more, and I'm going to use the word flamboyant, but that's not fair. But her desire for entertainment. When I talk about entertainment, I'm talking about dinners out. I'm talking about movies. I'm talking about going to see a comedy show. All the expenses that it takes to entertain a couple. We end up having this conversation, much like the conversation in the book, 8 Dates. And we felt it was rather important to have these conversations now so we can really determine we're getting close to that 3-month mark. And this is where relationships begin to have another turning point around the 3 and 4 month mark. Are we doing this from a casual perspective or are we doing this from a serious perspective? Let me repeat that. Are we doing this from a casual perspective, or are we doing it from a serious perspective? I believe when two people have spent a fair amount of time together, just like she and I have, and we are interested, we both desire long-term partnership, a life partner in our lives, that I think it's important to start having these conversations from the book, 8 Dates. Now, does this require, you could do some of these conversations before you ever go on a first date with someone. You could do some of these conversations while you're on a first date with someone, or a second date, or a third date, or before you're physically intimate. I invite you all to at least read this book for yourself so you know the various chapters, particularly chapter 1, which is about trust and commitment. I think you should, both people should talk about this early on, maybe before you're physically intimate with someone. And then as the relationship progresses, you can start having the other conversations. In our particular case, we talked about family and friends, how we would navigate our lives with respect to our family and friends. It's because we're two people that seek a long-term life partner type relationship. And while we haven't reached that place of saying, I love you or anything like that, I feel like it's a little too soon for both of us right now, because I love you is that kind of future commitment to somebody. I think it's important to have these difficult conversations. And I can tell you, I was struggling a little bit. I think I was struggling because as I'm leaning into this relationship, I'm finding there's emotional responsibility and physical responsibilities within a relationship that where and I'll be candid with you, I'm struggling because I kind of liked being by myself for a while. I really liked being by myself. And the minute you add someone into your life, there's an emotional responsibility for this person. There's a physical responsibility for this person. And I'm like, I'm not 100% sure I want to go all in. Now, certainly it's been relatively new. I'm not feeling that way, but there's this juggling, this juxtaposition of freedom versus responsibility on an emotional and physical level. So I'm just aware of these emotions and feelings. I'm not suggesting I'm going to run away from this relationship because of those reservations, but they play a weight. They weigh on me a little bit, because as a relationship is developed, the goal is to build the deeper roots of trust. And so when she and I had this radically honest conversation with one another, at the end of it, it built more trust between the two of us. We feel a little more aligned. We feel we're both on the same page, and we made agreements to one another is when something like this comes up, that we have these conversations as soon as we possibly can. And so, and to even now preface things by being more crystal clear, which I think reduces challenges later on down the road. Is this sinking in? Is this resonating with you? Please let me know. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what I just shared. Post a comment below. I'd like to hear what you thought. All right. I just want to give props to Annika for the $10 super sticker. Thank you for the love. Annika also posted a question. How do we address the differences in spiritual beliefs? I've met someone who is Muslim, not religious. I'm spiritual and New Age. We are both accepting of all beliefs. Would it work in the long term? So when I think of someone who's Muslim, someone who's Jewish, to some degree, that may not be their religion. That might be a function of their culture. So I'd be curious to know, how devout is he in his religion? Is he devout in it? Is he practicing in it? Or is it more part of a cultural thing? I know a lot of Jewish people, for example, they're culturally Jewish, but they might be, agnostic, atheists. They might be, spiritual, but not religious. So now, in this particular case, if he's devout in his religion, there might be a challenge and conflict there. But certainly people that are, to me, spiritual but not religious is more of a connection to your divinity, a connection to something greater than yourself without the structure of religion. That's the way I view it. You might view it slightly different, but I look at it as a connection to something greater than yourself, outside of the container of a structure regarding religion. So I don't think that's a deal breaker per se. I know people who are, I mean, actually, I was raised Muslim. My father was Muslim. My mother was she was non-practicing. But I was technically raised Muslim, but I never identified as Muslim. I've always identified with spiritual, but not religious. So, Annika, I hope that answers your question. That was a great question, and feel free to post a follow-up as well. Let's see. Brown Canetta, she says, if she wanted to go, why would you pay if you wanted to go somewhere and you invited someone? It was not an invitation. It was more like, this is where the miscommunication was. She was mentioning a show of a pretty famous comedian, Nikki Glazer. And she said, would you like to go to that? And she goes, I'll look into tickets. Now, it wasn't, I'm inviting you. It was like, would you like to go? So there was a slight miscommunication between the two of us. I didn't get clarity ahead of time. She didn't get clarity ahead of time. She wasn't per se inviting me. She was just wondering if this would be something we both want to do, because we both happen to like this comedian. Again, and we could certainly split the expense. It's not so much the money was only a little confusing because I think there was a misinterpretation as to who was going to be responsible. And that's where clear communication helps avoid these types of circumstances. So I hope that helps. Let's see. Lee is in the house. Is your desire to have your freedom because you don't feel the same way about her that you did with Marie? No, that's not it. Well, first off, for the record, I recognize that my relationship in my last relationship, I had an unhealthy, insecure attachment to this person. So when we think of, by the way, unhealthy attachment feels like love, but it's really an unhealthy attachment to another person. It's an insecure attachment I had. Because I'm feeling not as anxious and needy as I was before, the freedom piece is more, here's the reality. And this is, I'll be very personal with everyone here. A relationship comes with it emotional and physical responsibilities. It comes with the emotional responsibility of caring emotionally for another person. Trust is built by caring about the other person's needs. That comes with it with some weight, emotional weight. In it, there's a physical component of ultimately, if two people are going to be life partners, you want to take care of this other person. That's what differentiates a casual relationship from a serious relationship. Is a casual relationship just says, I want companionship, I want connection, I want sex, but I really don't want commitment with you. And most people are in casual relationships today. I'm here to encourage, but for serious relationship, it's contemplating that all in, I want to take care of you. And that freedom is, I struggle a little bit with wanting to take care of someone right now. Now, it partially with this person, we haven't built enough trust. I mean, if I fall deeply, madly in love with her, that might be a different circumstance. But right now, I'm, like, this is where a lot of times relationships fail, is because there's so much, there's weight to emotional responsibility and physical responsibility to a relationship. So anyway, I hope that answers your question. Okay. But no, my freedom is, there is some element of freedom where, I'm not doing my routines like I used to, partially because we're going back and forth between each other's homes, that sort of thing. So I'm a little bit out of my normal routine. But as you build something with someone, you start creating new routines. And I'm kind of navigating that, the way my life was, and now adding someone to my life. And there's a little bit of an adjustment period that goes on. And I think it's important to recognize all that. Okay. All right. Allison says, it takes time. You don't have to make a decision today. Enjoy it and keep it as it is for now. It's great. So, you know what? Yes, but at the same time, the more you spend time with someone, the more you become emotionally attached. And certainly for those that find themselves in relationships where they're attached to someone who isn't serious about a relationship, who's not really has any intent, we have to be careful by taking it slow and just going with the flow versus being intentional. And that's just my thought. Amy's in the house. Jonathan, from your perspective, is there anything for a woman to worry about with being overly generous financially in a committed? Wait. From your perspective, is there anything for women to worry about with being overly generous financially in a committed long-term relationship? If you're talking about the woman being overly generous financially, I think whether it's a man or a woman, being used for your resources, a very valid, experience for a lot of people. A lot of people feel used. I've heard women say, I don't want to be a person. I don't want to be a nurse. So, I recognize that we don't want, like a lot of people, especially at midlife, where we have to covet our resources, we might be reluctant. So if you're overly generous, then I think the concern would be is if you'll be taken advantage of. That is one potential worry. And I think we have to be mindful of people who are takers. I know a lot of people who are takers, whether they're a man or a woman. So I don't necessarily have a clear-cut boundary to share for you right now. Boundary is simply what's okay, what's not okay for me. You have to decide what's okay for you financially, but I would certainly be mindful of all those things. Absolutely. Okay. Hey, anyone want to join the love seat? I'm just going to post a link right there. Allison says, you guys have seen each other 30 of the 60 days. I'd say you both are serious about a relationship. Yeah, I mean, we spend regular time together. I'd say in the 2 months, in the 8 weeks that we've known each other, we've gotten together. I mean, we've practically seen each other, and it's easy because we can just dart in and out and say hi and hang out. Like I said before, she's going to join me hopefully to watch the sunset later. I go over to her house and hang out. We've done a Netflix and binged weekend together. So we've spent we've gone out with friends. I've met her daughter. She's going to meet my son. So yes, it's becoming serious in the senses that we're trying each other's lives on for size to see if there's a fit there. Now, it takes months and months and months to build the deep roots of trust, but we're in that process, and certainly because of ease of seeing one another. But Jonathan, I'm in a long distance relationship. We can only see each other 1 out of every 365 days because he lives 10,000 miles from me and we spend all day on the phone texting. By the way, folks, the only way to get to know someone is to be physically with them on a regular basis. I mean, just got to recognize that's how you get to know someone. Okay. Moon Mama wants to know, what's the love seat? Moon Mama, I just posted a link. If you want to join me live, you can have a conversation with me right now. Just hit that link and we can have a conversation live. All right. Gigi wants to know, I'm going to reply as a 68-year-old female. I see so many women my age struggling because they didn't take care of their financial well-being. Just be sure your needs are met first. I agree. Lee wants to ask, how do you decipher insecure attachment with healthy love? If you're not familiar with the book Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller, you'll learn about the 3 types of attachment styles. Well, actually, technically 2. There's insecure and secure attachment. Within insecure is fearful avoidant, dismissive avoidant, and anxious preoccupied. And you will find that most people find themselves in insecure attached relationships that they confuse as love. Now, when I say confuse as love, love is genuinely, in my opinion, completely giving yourself to another and saying, I want to take care of you. That's the deepest form of love in my mind, at least in romantic love. So I deeply care for you and I want to take care of you. Sadly, a lot of people are insecurely attached, and then they find themselves in relationships where they're operating on an unhealthy basis versus a more secure, healthy basis. And I invite you to read that. Okay. Kathy says, one definitely has to be solid with their self and life before starting any connection. Here's my feeling on that. Most human beings are not perfect. So I don't know, to the extent that it's solid, I want to differentiate between perfect and, they can stand on their own. I think people that can stand on their own, if they feel solid within their life. Now, a lot of people believe that they're emotionally solid when they are emotionally dysfunctional. They are delusioned to this because they have this fantasy of where they're at on an emotional level. So to that extent, a person can believe that they're solid and not be solid, is a very common theme. So, but I just want to differentiate between solid. I think they feel like the ground underneath them feels solid. That's a good place to start. And for those that don't, then certainly if you're entering into a relationship, I think it's good to share where you're at on that level as well. Okay. Lee wants to ask, why do you believe yours was insecure with Marie? Because I know I was insecurely attached to her. I'm very aware that I have what's known as an anxious attachment style. I'm very aware of that. And I'm aware that in many cases I got ahead of myself in that relationship. I found myself being needy in that relationship. Now, I don't want to exaggerate it. It's just mildly ahead of myself, mildly needy, but I recognize that I wasn't in a solid, I was attached in an unhealthy way for me. And I recognized it. And it's easier to recognize this after the fact, after the ending of the relationship. Okay. Joe Daisy wants to know, has anyone heard from Debbie? Yes, Debbie has been around. So she's around. Allison said, I thought I'd healed my insecure attachment. Then I got into a relationship. Anything left unhealed will present itself to be healed. Yeah, that's the thing about I don't believe, I think most human beings, even as solid as they think their life is, coming back to Catherine's comment, a lot of people think they're in a good place, but they get triggered when they're in a new relationship. That's what relationships are supposed to do, to help us grow beyond where we're at. So not everyone has to be, if you're completely dysfunctional, it's going to be difficult to be in a relationship. But you know what? I think if we're solid enough, we have residue from our past relationship. We have residue from our childhood wounds. And a new relationship is an opportunity for two people to grow and heal together. That's one of the benefits of being in a relationship with someone. It's just an observation I have. Moon Mama says, I've never had a healthy attachment. Moon Mama, I can honestly say that my current relationship might be the healthiest one I've ever had to date. I've had 3 significant relationships in my life. I've had a marriage of 12 and a half years. I had another relationship 6 years on and off again, and another relationship that was about 1.5 years. I would say in most cases, I was insecurely attached in all 3 of those relationships. Actually, my marriage, I was just following the blueprint of go to college, get a job, meet a girl, get married, buy a house, start a family. I was just following programming. So anyway, so and just to piggyback on that. Okay. Moon Mama says, I was married for 20 years, almost 20 years. Yeah, I would suspect that many people haven't had I think it's very rare to see securely attached couples who are in a healthy relationship. I think that's a rarity. I think that's the exception, not the rule. Given that 50% of first marriages fail, second marriages fail at a 65%, third marriages end at a 75% level. We have a population of people who are married who are unhappy, and we have a significant population of people who are in casual relationships, uncertain about the context of the relationship. So I jokingly say relationships are not for the faint of heart. Relationship dating is like the Hunger Games out there. That's at least my perception anyway. All right, last chance to join the love seat. We're not going to take any more. Let's see what we have here. All right. Hey, listen, I need some fodder. Ask me a question. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up early tonight. What do you think about this conversation? What did you think about my personal share talking about the difficult subjects from the book 8 Dates by Doctors John and Julie Gottman? I'd like to hear your thoughts on what I shared tonight. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up rather early for tonight. All right, going once, going twice. Oh, here we go. Kathy Canadian wants to let Moon Mama know you should read the Hoffman process. It might really help a lot. I feel it's helping me tremendously. Kathy Canadian is absolutely right. Let me spend a minute. Folks, this book called The Hoffman Process is a deep dive into healing childhood wounds and adult traumas. As Kathy mentioned, this is a tremendous book to read and learn about yourself. I highly recommend it. All the books I recommend are listed below. Highly recommend this out. Okay. So Catherine said, I don't use the word perfect. One can see solid, healthy in so many ways. It's so evident. Yes, I was just differentiating for the perception some people might have. But again, solid to one person might believe that they're solid, but that doesn't mean they are solid, is my point. Just because someone believes that they're emotionally solid doesn't make them emotionally solid. In fact, a lot of people are delusioned or in a fantasy of their capacity to be in a relationship. And that's why, dating in relationships is a risk. Love is a risk. It's still the best game in town, but it's still a risk, because the minute we open up to another person, being vulnerable, being authentic and transparent, it can be rather scary. Doesn't mean it's not going to work out, but it could just simply be scary. Brown Canetta goes, I think if you are identifying issues from a lack of communication, addressing them was a great move forward so it doesn't happen again. And by the way, I want to give credit to my girlfriend. She initiated the conversation. She said it was very uncomfortable. Again, we had a miscommunication. And these are the things that happen. But to the extent that we had if you're not familiar with the book, Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, I highly recommend reading this, because what we had was a very compassionate conversation. It was a little bit uncomfortable. Sometimes it's difficult to get to what you're feeling in a moment, because we can have conflicting thoughts. We can have two thoughts at the same time. Part of me wants freedom and part of me wants a relationship. They're two conflicting thoughts. It's just, they're thoughts. They're not absolute facts. They're just thoughts. And sometimes when you're with somebody communicating, we can have conflicting thoughts. And this is why when you can process in a healthy way, and thankfully I'm with a person who's done a significant amount of personal development, self-help, spiritual work, and therapy, so we can have these more grown-up conversations. And I'm very grateful for that. So thank you so much for that. Joe Daisy says, J.A., have you tried Tantra with your new love? Yes and no. A lot of I think I'm kind of naturally tantric. Not that I've done a few exercise along that way. Some of what we do is along those lines. But I'm not an aficionado at any stretch of the means. So thank you so much for asking that question. Allison says, I think how you value money is more important than who is spending versus saving, meaning each of you think about how you spend value, even if one is spending more, one is responsible, one is wasteful. Exactly. Our value around money is by the way, when you consider money as one of the primary reasons for divorce, I think how a person spends money, how they value money, how they view money, how they make money, how much money they have for their future, all of this is a huge, significant role to people choosing partnership-based relationships versus casual relationships. Casual relationships, you just live in your own homes, you get together when you want, you have companionship, you have connection, you have physical intimacy, but it's not really building with someone. And we are talking about how we view our future. So we're having these conversations. We're a little bit different in our lifestyle. We're a little bit different in the way we view entertainment. So we're navigating some of those differences. Everybody is going to have differences in relationship. You're going to have differences of the type of, like someone wants to drink beer and someone wants to drink wine and someone wants to drink champagne, someone wants to drink a cocktail. We all have our preferences, our differences. Very few people are perfectly aligned with one another, and how we're going to get more aligned is through deeper, honest, heart-centered communication. Okay? All right. Well, I think that'll be a great place to wrap up tonight. Did you get value out of this conversation? The 3 non-sexual moves that turn a man on? I hope you did. Hope you got value out of my personal share as well. If you did, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Post a comment below. I do my best to read them all in the first 24 hours. As always, if you find value in my videos, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of new videos. And if you want to connect with me directly, there's links below to schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. There's a link to join my group called Midlife Love Mastery, where you can have direct access to me on a regular basis. There's a link to follow me on Instagram to get all the books I recommend listed below. All right, I'm going to wrap up this video as I always do. First off, give myself a big, gigantic Jonathan Bear hug of self-love. I'm going to reach into the camera and give you a hug of love, if that's okay. I'm going to ask you to turn to someone, a pet, a teddy bear, a pillow, and give it or them a hug of love, because hugs are a great source of love. And let's face it, we could all use more love in our lives. Look, I want to thank Annika for the super sticker. I want to thank Roller Girl, Christine Noel. I want to thank you so much for the super stickers. I want to thank Joe Daisy. I want to thank Allison. I want to thank Moon Mama. I want to thank Catherine, Roller Girl, Canadian, Kathy Canadian, Moonwalk, Moon Mama, 1990 or 98. Every Allison, Phil, every Gigi, everyone who joined us tonight. Big hugs. Wishing you all a super duper wonderful evening. Be well. Thanks. Bye now. Bye-bye. Bye.